Dr. Sleep won a movie poll that I put up a few weeks ago, and so I did get around to watching it. I watched it twice. Did I like it? Stick around to find out. Okay, you guys, so as I said a few weeks ago, I put up a poll and I listed 4 movies that I hadn't seen. You can only put 4 in a poll from what I can tell. And Dr. Sleep won out. I was happy that it won out. Not that I would have been unhappy for the other movies to win out, because they were movies I was interested to watch, hence the reason I had the poll. And in preparation for Dr. Sleep, I went back and I rewatched The Shining one night while I was doing work that didn't involve too much brain power on my work, and I was able to concentrate more on The Shining. And The Shining, I've always been kind of, it's okay. But when I rewatched it in preparation for Dr. Sleep, I felt like I developed more of an appreciation for the first movie and really loved the cinematography and felt like Jack Nicholson was phenomenal in the role. Now, I do know that Stephen King was not happy with that version, but I personally feel like it's very good. I have not listened to the book, nor have I listened to or read Dr. Sleep. The reason I mentioned that I saw Dr. Sleep twice is because on Vudu, we have the regular version, the theatrical cut, and then there's also the director's cut, which is an extra 30 minutes on top of an already long 2.5 hours. So the director's cut is 3 hours, and I watched both versions. I watched both because I wanted to compare. And so I will talk about some of the differences between the two later on in this discussion, which I feel is going to be quite long. I'm going to try not to be long, but you know how it is. I took a lot of notes, you guys. So right off the bat, I'll get into some pros, or the pros that I had for Dr. Sleep. For those of you who don't know, if you haven't picked up on the clues already, Dr. Sleep is a sequel to The Shining, and it picks up with Jack Nicholson's son and his story as an adult and his own struggles and his own battle with alcoholism. Something that I liked, or something that I noticed right off the bat, and I put it in the pro column, was they were talking about the different people with powers in here, and they referred to some of the people as pushers. And that immediately reminded me of the terminology that he used in Firestarter. So Firestarter's father, Charlie's father, was a pusher. He could make them do things with his mind, and he always had these nosebleeds and everything. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know. I'm going to assume that maybe all of these are within sort of the same universe. There was no mention of Charlie McGee in this movie. There was no mention of Firestarters, but I just thought that was kind of cool. Something else I liked about this, and I don't know how much of this came directly from the book or how much of it was just from the screenplay, dialogue that had been written directly for the screenplay. I liked some of the passages of dialogue in here, or some of the interactions. I'll give you, I wrote a couple examples down. One was when Ewan McGregor's character said, "We're all dying. The world is one big hospice with fresh air." I thought that was just something so simple, but so profound and so true. And then another thing, when the character played by Rebecca Ferguson was saying to another character that was quite a bit younger than her, she says, "Oh, gravity hasn't noticed you yet, not at 15 or something like that." So it was in that scene, actually, right around here. And so I thought that was kind of clever. I just liked the way the characters interacted with each other. I didn't get into what the premise of the story is, and maybe I should have started off with that. But anyway, like I said, this is about his son, Jack Torrance's son. I think his name's Dan. Dan? Yeah, Dan. And what it's about is he comes into psychic contact with a girl that has these great powers, and there's also this other group of people with powers, and they can sense others like them. And sometimes they decide to convert them to become part of their little group, which they call the True Knot. And other times they kill them so that they can absorb their essence as they're dying, and they have contained their essence in these containers. Okay, that's redundant. So they latch on to the little girl that 𝐂𝐇𝐀𝐏𝐄𝐑𝐒's character has made psychic contact with, or she made psychic contact with him. So they're trying to find her. That's the basic setup. And if you haven't seen it, maybe I've given away too much. I went into this only knowing that this was a sequel to The Shining. I did do a reaction to the trailer. I did not go back and watch my reaction to the trailer in preparation for filming this, so I don't remember what I thought about it. I think maybe I was intrigued, but I don't recall right off the bat. The performances in here, I really appreciated Ewan McGregor's performance in here as Dan. There was just something so welcoming about the way he would interact with others, especially when he was working in this place where it's like a nursing home and people would be dying, and he would sit with them and try to kind of help ease their way. And the interactions he had with them was very touching. It was very sweet. It was very heartfelt, and I just really liked those scenes. Also, another standout in here for me was Rebecca Ferguson. Oh my goodness, she did such a good job as Rose the Hat. She felt truly threatening. She felt like a very real menace, and the way she carried herself with her body, and the way her facial expressions and her tone of voice when she would talk. Hello there. And she just sounded so scary. And I thought she just did a fantastic job. She is someone who I have come more and more to appreciate. I think the very first time I noticed her was in the Mission Impossible movies, and she was like, she's okay. But the more I've seen of her, especially after watching her in Dr. Sleep, I thought she just was so good in here. What great casting, in my opinion. Like I said, I haven't read the book, so I don't know how to compare it, but just going by the way she was in here, I just thought she did such a great job. Something else I liked about this is the sobering aspect to it. There are a lot of things that touch on and remind you of, or just in your face, about the end of life and what is beyond that. Do we go on? Also about redemption and trying to walk away from battles with your demons and not letting the demons win, struggles with addiction, things like that, and finding purpose in life. So I appreciated those thematic elements of the film. I don't know how that compares to the book. I'm going to assume that this might be closer to the way the book was than The Shining was to its movie. Also, I liked how it tied back into The Shining in various ways. And by that, I mean, there were recreations of scenes, infamous scenes from the movie, when Jack is going after the wife, when Danny's riding down the hallways on his little tricycle, when Jack is breaking into the bathroom and the wife is in the corner screaming. They recreated those in accurate detail. I had just seen the movie, and so it was fresh in my mind, and that was done very well. Also, the cinematography, very interesting cinematography with camera movements and angles, and the way scenes would shift, or the camera would shift and perspective would shift. I really like that. Very well done. But Mike Flanagan did this, so I went into this knowing that it was probably going to be pretty solid, and I knew that it had positive reviews pretty much across the board. So I figured that I would enjoy it. But I did not know how much I would enjoy it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. What else? The score, different elements of, well, I don't know if this really is part of score or what, but there were some scenes where there was this heartbeat that you could hear, this underlying heartbeat, and that kind of added or amped up the tension. And you always felt a certain level of tension in here because you knew the different things that were happening. So I like that, just really set the mood. That's basically the list of observations / pros I had about this film. I'm going to move on now to the cons, and I'm going to try to remember to put chapter breaks here because I did take notes in specific order, or I did organize them in specific order. The cons. I don't have a lot of cons in here, but these are the ones I do have. So when they did flashbacks of like this, events from the first Shining, they also showed extra scenes, which that belongs, I think, in the pro category. They show extra scenes, not from The Shining, but from life after events of The Shining with the mother and Danny. And I liked that. But something about that part of the movie, hold on a minute. Oh, geez. Okay, what was I saying when I got interrupted by this little stinker? That part of the movie, so obviously they had to recast the role of Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson. Having viewed this movie twice, I warmed up a little bit more to the casting that they made than initially. So initially, the actress that played the mother, well, you can tell she doesn't look exactly like, she favors Shelley Duvall to a great extent, or how Shelley Duvall appeared in The Shining, but something I was hoping that they would do would be to do a digital recreation of her face on the actress's face. I think that would have been amazing, spectacular. Same thing with who they cast for the father, who was Henry freaking Thomas. I didn't even realize that until after I'd seen the movie, the first movie, the theatrical version, and I was watching the featurette, and I was like, that's Henry Thomas. Holy crap. The first time I saw the movie, I didn't think, I was like, okay, there's parts about this actor, whoever he is. I didn't, like I said, didn't know it was him. Well, there's kind of moments where you a little bit looks like Jack Nicholson, a little bit with the eyebrows, but not exactly. But upon the second viewing, or the director's cut viewing, I could see it, definitely. And you can see it in the picture here. I still wish they had gone and done digital recreations. I don't know why they didn't. I don't know if it was because cost or time factor, or maybe they just see he favors Jack Nicholson here pretty well, or if it was maybe legal issues. I honestly do not know. Anyway, the mother, she does not sound enough like Shelley Duvall's character, like Wendy. And I only noticed that, I was only aware of that because, as I said, I had rewatched The Shining right before watching this. So Wendy has very distinct Southern drawl. She's real Southern. Don't be like that. I mean, just maybe not quite that bad, but she's really Southern, okay? And the actress who played her did not have that Southern twang. There were moments where it was there a little bit, but with the character of Wendy in the original movie, it was very prominent. And I felt like that could have been made a little bit better. It's not a huge deal, honestly. It is not a deal breaker. None of my cons are deal breakers. Another thing, there was something that seemed a little bit mismatch, or not. It seemed like a little bit of a continuity issue with regard to something that a character said. There's a scene where Ewan McGregor's talking to the black guy from the first movie, the one who was also psychic or also had The Shining. I think, what was his character's name? Oh my gosh, can't remember. But he's the one that first met Danny in the kitchen, and then in the first movie, he got killed by Jack. They said in a featurette that I watched, which I'll talk about later, they said that his character never died in the book. I didn't know that. Interesting. Well, they killed him in The Shining. That was such a bummer. I had forgotten about that part. Anyway, I had forgotten all about his character. Anyway, when Ewan McGregor sees him again for the first time in the movie, he starts to try to do this mental trick to lock him away in these vaults in his mind, or these chests in his mind. It's a technique that he learned to protect himself from memories or the things that were still in his head from the Overlook Hotel. And the very first time that he meets up with that guy again, or he sees that guy again in his mind, he started to try to lock him away. And the guy said that he can't lock him up because he can't lock up memories or something like that. Okay. But then Later, when they meet each other again at some point, Ewan McGregor didn't know that was him at first, and he started to do the lockup thing because he was startled by this shape in front of him. And the guy said to him, "Oh, you're about ready to lock me up." But if he can't lock him up because he's a memory, why would he even make a statement like that? That was confusing to me. Maybe I missed something. Y'all let me know if I did, because that jumped out at me. That actually didn't jump out at me until the second viewing, but it did jump out at me. Not on the first viewing, but it did eventually. The last con was, if there was a weak link in this movie, it would have to be the little girl who played Abra. In the featurette, King felt like she did great. She was wonderful. She was just perfect. She was just awesome. She was amazing. I don't think she was all that great. She was just okay. She wasn't awful, but she was just okay. It stood out at me enough to notice, where you had the contrast of actors like Ewan McGregor, Rebecca Ferguson doing a really great job, and then this little girl, and maybe it's just because she's young. She's quite young. This was a movie that came out back in 2019. Maybe whatever she's been in after this movie, maybe she's gotten a little bit better. Maybe this is just how her character is supposed to be, but she felt a bit wooden, and it didn't feel like it was something that came naturally to her. There were moments where you could see a spark of talent, but in general, she just felt very just meh. So those are the cons about Dr. Sleep as a whole. Now, I wanted to talk about the extended cut. Like I said, it's almost 30 minutes longer. It's slightly bloodier, but not by much. And by slightly bloodier, I mean there is a scene where the Knot they're killing a child, and it lasts a little bit longer. There's a little bit more blood. Also, there are certain scenes where the camera holds longer on shots, or scenes are a little bit longer. There's extended dialogue in some of the scenes. Also, it's broken up into chapters, which is kind of cool. I think it's 6 chapters that it's split up into. Some whole scenes in here are just completely standalone. Well, what I mean is, there are some scenes in here that were completely cut from the theatrical version. There's a scene where we see Abra sooner, or not sooner, but we see a scene of her before the birthday party. She's playing the piano or something like that. So we get some entirely new scenes, so that was cool. Also, these extra scenes, such as the one with Abra and some other ones. For example, there's a scene where Rose the Hat, so she's trying to find Abra. At some point in the movie, she does find Abra. You don't know exactly how. In the theatrical version, you don't really know how. You just kind of assume it's through the magic of her being able to hone in on these different people like her, because they track different people down. But in the director's cut, they have found her because of something that happened with her power that put a little blurb in the news, in the local news, and that's how they knew the general area of where she was. That sort of stuff helped to flesh out other scenes better, and in my opinion, that's just nothing but a positive. Also, we see more of the true Knot, in addition to, like I said already, with the scene of Abra before we saw her at the birthday party. So we see more of these 2 separate family units, Abra's family and the True Knot. And so that helps the themes of the movie feel deeper. You know, it feels more fully realized. If you have not seen the director's cut yet, I highly advise you to watch it, especially if you really like the theatrical version. Maybe you'll watch it and you'll feel like, it's not worth the extra 30 minutes. I feel like it's worth the extra 30 minutes. Maybe I should have watched that before I even watched the theatrical version. But the reason that I watched the theatrical version is because that's the official, the one that came out on the big screen. I wish I'd gone to see it on the big screen. I really do. I mistakenly thought that the director's cut, whoa. You want to get down? I mistakenly thought that the director's cut was going to be different, crucially different at the end than the theatrical version. And the reason I thought that was because of what happened when Arturo watched The Town in preparation for a live stream discussion of that particular year. And he watched the extended version because that was the one we had on our Vudu account. And in that one, the ending is completely different. The character of Ben Affleck in there, what happens to him is totally the opposite of what happened in the theatrical version. So I was wary of that, but basically, no, the extended version, the director's cut, it does not change really at all fundamentally. You just get some extra things that help to supplement in a very positive way the material that you already saw in the theatrical version. Everything ends pretty much, well, everything does end in exactly the same way. I think that's it on commentary about the director's cut. After I saw the theatrical version, I watched featurettes. They had some featurettes that came along with the versions that we had. And they were talking about, or King was talking about how when he wrote The Shining, he was a functioning alcoholic and that he was a recovered one when he wrote Dr. Sleep. And so I'm guessing, obviously, because he was in these very different places in his life at the time, the tone is probably different for each one. And it makes me curious to go and listen to both of those books and compare and contrast those. So maybe I will get around to that one day. Also, they were talking about how, in reference to the fact that King was not a fan of the Kubrick version of his vision, they changed it. It said that, I think they said that they changed the ending of Dr. Sleep, or what was it? I wrote it down as I was watching it. And what I wrote was they changed the ending of Dr. Sleep so that King could have the ending of the Shining movie that he never got. And I found that pretty interesting. And despite the fact that The Shining was different from King's vision, Dr. Sleep was probably, well, it was closer to King's vision. Yes, they had to change some stuff for purposes of it being on film. Despite these differences between these two with regard to the original work, Mike Flanagan was able to meld the two visions, book and movie, so that they complement each other. They work very well together, I think. I really liked how he tied in elements of events from The Shining. Now, I don't know if in Dr. Sleep, the book, if those flashback moments are shown. I'm not sure. Or if that was just something that Flanagan put in here to even more strongly interconnect these two movies. So that was fascinating. He made a comment that specifically Flanagan made a comment that he was continuing the cinematic language of Kubrick without just doing it over and again. There were those scenes that were repeated from the original or from the first movie, but they were very, very small. It wasn't like he went and recreated entire scenes. It was just really quick glimpses of those infamous scenes, like him going after his wife on the stairs, him chasing after Danny with the axe, breaking through the bathroom door with the axe. Very, very quick. They lasted only a moment. Yet there were those other things from that time of the first movie that I guess that's what Flanagan means when he says he was continuing the cinematic language of Kubrick. Also, a really interesting point, well, not point, but like an interesting bit of trivia, and this is the very last thing that I have for my notes, is that in the book, okay, so in the movie, Abra calls Dan her uncle because they're related with, not directly by blood, but because of their powers. She calls him her uncle. But that was really a nod at the fact that in the book, he really was her uncle by blood, not just by power. How that worked out was that Jack had apparently had a child out of wedlock with another person, and so Abra's mother is Jack's half-sister. And so Abra truly is his niece. For whatever reason, they changed that in Dr. Sleep. I'm not exactly sure why. I honestly feel that it would have been better if they'd kept that part intact, because it would have helped explain the strong bond that Dan had with Abra. I guess, I mean, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. You can understand they had a strong bond anyway because of the psychic power, but just knowing that they are truly related by blood, it makes it even deeper. It's kind of a bummer that they removed that. I'm not sure why they did it. Maybe you guys who are really super deep into this book and the movie and everything, maybe you know the answer to that. I don't know. Maybe they felt like it would be an added complication to throw in there the fact that Jack had cheated on Wendy. Given the type of husband he seemed to be even before he went cuckoo in the Overlook, it's not necessarily out of the realm of possibility that he would have cheated on his wife, because he seemed like there was an edge to him, some sharpness to him already. You could see that being a thing. Anyway, whatever. It doesn't change how I feel about this movie, this story. I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to do these polls more often, because who knows when I would have actually gotten around to finally watching this movie if it hadn't been for me just, y'all tell me what to watch. And that kind of puts like an extra oomph behind me, because sometimes what I was saying is, doing the polls and having a particular movie emerge on top, it motivates me more to watch it, because if I really have no direction as to what I want to watch, there's so many choices, and sometimes I spend more time trying to decide what I want to watch than actually watching it. This was really fun, and I'm going to do it more. I will look back through my watch list on Letterboxd and pull up 4 more. Maybe I'll add the 3 that didn't emerge on top. I'll throw that back into the poll. I'm not sure. We'll see. But there's so many movies to choose from. I have a ton on my watch list. There's so many movies, you guys, and so little time. So yeah, those are my thoughts on The Shining. Not The Shining. Well, sort of The Shining, but those are my thoughts on Dr. Sleep. And if you guys have seen it, did you like it? How did it compare to the book for you if you listened to or if you read the book? And how did it compare with The Shining? Do you feel like it measures up to The Shining, or do you feel like it falls a little bit short? I felt like they're great compliments to each other, and I loved that the story continued with Dan. And yeah, great job. Glad this movie won. Thank you for participating in the poll, and do it again sometime. All right, that's it for now, you guys. Later.